This is the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
We hear in the gospel passage from St. John that here's Jesus. He goes into this temple and he sees during the Passover time, while they're celebrating this sacred event of Passover and being freed from the slavery of Egypt, that here they were and the thing had degenerated into a time of making money. So basically what would happen is a Jewish person would come into the temple, and in order to buy a lamb, an unblemished lamb to be offered up as a sacrifice to Yahweh, in order to buy the lamb, they had to buy a temple coin. So let's just say they'd have like $100 and they could get a temple coin for $50. So they were like marking up the price in the money exchange. And then they took this $50 temple coin, and in order to buy a lamb that was probably only worth like say $10, they were charged $85. So they had to like pay that as well. So they were getting ripped off and hosed all over the place. Almost as like when you're in Disney World, when you have a family of 4 going there for like a 1 scoop of ice cream for $27. But you can imagine how enraged Jesus had gotten. You know, he's like, because he's recalling, and he knows full well the scripture of Yahweh, the Father, had brought them out of slavery, led them through the promised land, was this eternal presence in the Ark of the Covenant, that I will be your God and you will be my people, and I will be with you always. And again, Jesus would recall the prophet Micah, you know, that this is what Yahweh asks of you: to act justly, to be humble, and to love tenderly. And he walks into this temple and he's going, what the heck is going on here? How has this become so degenerated in terms of Yahweh? And so he's enraged, and he takes this cord, and it's in all of the Gospels. You get a sense this really did happen. And this actually probably what started all the leaders of the Jewish faith to say, you know, we got to get rid of this guy because he's really cutting into our prophet here. He's a troublemaker. So we have this event of Jesus and throwing out the money changers in the temple. You know what I was thinking? I wonder, like, when you also look at this, here's Jesus and he's saying, I have this zeal, I have this compelling drive inside to proclaim a message about Yahweh, the source of all that is, the divine, the Father, God. And I got to even bring these people out of this whole idea of sacrificing a lamb. I mean, if you really think about it, it's kind of amazing how when you look back, I guess 2,000 years ago, that somehow the source of all that is really interested in having a lamb sacrificed to it. And it had to be an unblemished lamb, it had to be a male lamb, it had to be 1 year old. It had all these little details that were going on in there. And he's going like, I got to try to get these people out of this, let alone being completely ripped off by all the people who are leading the Jewish faith. So he probably was really beside himself. Because if you look at Jesus, Jesus came to inaugurate the kingdom of heaven. Jesus came to introduce that this kingdom of heaven is a reality inside of a person. It's a way of trying to understand who they really are. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And then, how beautiful, how powerful. Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and everything is granted unto you. Jesus knew that happiness and fulfillment is never going to be found out there in a circumstance, a situation, or a relationship, but that fulfillment and wholeness can only come from within each one of us. And the beauty of it is, it's already there. It's already there. It has to be awakened. It has to be uncovered. It has to be discovered. And you think like when we're little, right? You ever see a picture of yourself when you're like a little baby? You're just sitting there. There's just this pure being. I think of like little Rachel when she was like just, like maybe 6 months or a year old. There's no self-consciousness. There's just this pure smile. And then they go into school and they want to just be friends and play with each other. And then again, as time goes on, inevitably, something starts to get initiated into that. I can remember, I don't know what I was, maybe like the 4th grade. And you had the reading groups. Remember the reading groups? You had the Eagles, and then you had the Blue Jays, and then down and then and then, and you had like the Pigeons or something like that. They were the ones that, they could barely read. I don't know. What reading group were you in?
I was the Redbirds.
Oh, the Redbirds. How smug. I didn't like the Redbirds. I was the Pigeon, but no. But I mean, so you're introduced to these categories of like, who's the smart kids? Who's the kids that aren't so? Who's the fast kids? What'd you get on the grade? And you get into all these senses of comparing yourself, and then you start to get this sense of better than, less than, not good enough, inadequate. Isn't it interesting how the 3 core things of a human being, the 3 core wounds are, there's something wrong with me, I'm not good enough, and I don't belong. Those are the 3 things that we all walk around with. But then when you start to realize that, well, everybody's walking around with that, you start to realize I can let it go because it's really just a false, distorted conclusion that human beings can draw about themselves. In other words, of course you belong, of course you fit in, of course there's nothing wrong with you, and of course you're not inadequate. So what happens is we get into these roles, and we start to identify ourselves in terms of these roles. And it's interesting, I think about like what I was going to say. I always like to just be open during the week to just see what life presents itself, and somehow I just take that as an inspiration of what to say. And so it was funny because I went to the bank on Friday morning. I had to go over something with a business checking account. And so I'm talking to this lady. She's on the other side of the plexiglass, and we're talking. And so one thing leads to another. She's like, well, what do you do? And what's your practice or whatever? And I go, I'm a psychotherapist. And then she's, excuse me, Donna's not here to give the water. She was a banker. So we got like, you're a banker, I'm a psychotherapist. And I thought to myself, it's interesting. If you asked me that question in 1988 and I was in the bank, I would have said, I'm a Catholic priest. So I'm a Catholic priest, I'm a psycho, who are I? Who are you? You're like I was identifying myself with these roles. And I just sort of noticed that when I was at the bank. And then it's funny. This person talks to me about, there's something it's on Hulu. And it's called In and of Itself. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's a one-man off-Broadway play. It's played like about 530 times or something like that. And so I said, nothing to do the other day, so I watched it. And it's very interesting because in the beginning of the play, it's sort of an interactive play. So you have you walk in as a guest or, as a ticket holder for the play, and there's a wall. And there's a wall, and on the wall there's all these tags, like, banker, lawyer, clerk, secretary, nurse. I'm an instigator, I'm a procrastinator, all these different things. And of course, like the people who went first, they had their pick of whatever they wanted to choose from. And then as time went on, the pickings got a little slimmer and you had to just take whatever came close to it. But underneath the tag was another tag that said, I am. So every roll, underneath every roll was, I am. And I thought, this is crazy, because I was just thinking about this, and like here I'm watching this play. And as I was watching it, the guy who does the play, he's talking about different things. And he starts to share a little bit of his story. And his story, and he's got little pictures of himself or films of him running through a sprinkler. You know, remember the sprinklers back, in the day, right? It was like a lot of fun. And he's a little boy, and he's like all around all these little kids, and they're all standing there, and the mother is like beside, like filming him and everything. And then he like shares the story that his dad left when he was a little boy. He barely even remembers his dad. It was just him and his mom. His dad just abandoned the family. And then one day he said he was thirsty, and he was like maybe 6 years old, and he got up to get a water in his little glass by his nightstand. And when he went downstairs, he saw in the living room, his mother was kissing another woman. And he was like, oh, he didn't know what to think of that. And then he had a little friend. They were like the best of friends, and they were playing pirates in the sandbox. And one thing led to another about his mother. And then his best friend said to him, I can't play with you anymore. My mother said, I can't play with you anymore because of what's going on in your family. I can't play. So he never saw this kid. And then I think the mother had to leave town. And I thought to myself, I got so sad watching this. such a good-hearted guy. And I thought to myself, like, wow, what's that like? What would that be like, that your dad abandoned you when you were like a little boy? What's that like to grow up and realize that your mom is gay, and then to be left by your best friend? He's only 7 years old. What's that like? And then I thought, like, gee, my life, I don't know, I was sort of lucky, right? I grew up in an intact family. And I guess, I don't care what your family is. I don't care if you're African American, Chinese, Caucasian, Muslim, Catholic, Jewish, Protestant, whatever. I guarantee you that if you went into everybody's house, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a heartache. Everybody's got a disappointment. While I grew up in a nice town in Livingston, and I went to Arleta Valley in Orange, and I remember going down there, and I remember a lot of African Americans were down there. In Livingston, there weren't too many African Americans back in the 60s and the 70s. And, there was Jerome Anderson and Celeste Jenkins, and they won the track event, and Jerome was a great basketball player. And another girl, Natalie, I can't think of her last name, but she was brilliant. African American, went to Duke University from Arleta Valley. And I don't recall anybody, no prejudice, no racist. We all kind of interacted and got along and enjoyed each other. And, and then I guess as you grow up, and then things, I don't know what starts to emerge like in our society today. And I think my point is that I realize that we all grow up a certain way, but then there's also the need to look at how other people grow up. What's it like to be them? What's that like? And what's that like to experience being rejected or, not being embraced because of your sexual orientation or because of the color of your skin or your nationality? And I just had this sense of sadness. And I was watching this show, and they have maybe a couple hundred people in the audience. They don't know each other. And there started to be these interactive things, and people would come up on the stage and they would share different things about their life. and different people were crying and talking about they hadn't seen somebody in their family for 10 years or some sort of an emotional cutoff, and the need to kind of reconcile with that person and come together. And I was really struck by realizing that we really are all one, aren't we? We're all these spiritual awarenesses living in our body. This is the body. Everybody's got a body. They got a skin color. They got a nationality, an ethnicity, a language. But if you really look at everybody, we're all human beings. And we're all here to acknowledge and to accept each other and to embrace and love one another, because basically we're all looking for the same thing. We're all looking to be loved. We're all looking to be accepted. We're all looking to belong. That's really at the heart of every human being. And when we can open up and realize that we're all looking for the same thing. And I think this is what Jesus was trying to communicate, that this I am. Not I am this or I am that, but just that you are. And for everybody to be embraced and accepted for that. And isn't it amazing how in the second reading from Paul's letter to the Corinthians, now this is like, say, 25 or 30 years after the crucifixion and resurrection, if you listen to that, right, they're arguing. These people are arguing over whose gift is better than the other gift. Well, I have the gift of tongues. I have the gift of prophecy. I have the gift of healing. Like, mine's better than yours. I'm like, oh my God. Then Paul's going like, what is with us? Why do we have to do that? We're even going to have a comparison contest over whose gifts of the Spirit are better than the others. Why? Why are we doing that? Why? Why can't we just allow each other to be who they are? Well, you're not showing up the way I have this picture. So therefore I have to be critical of that or be against it, or I don't know. And it's kind of interesting. I was listening to something else and it was talking about this idea of what would you to consider that if you hate somebody or you hate a particular group, that what you're really disclosing is your own self-hatred. That the hatred that you're throwing out, projecting out over there, is really what's coming on in here, right? So if you think of a projector and it's projecting an image of a tiger, right? The tiger is not over there. The tiger is within the projector being thrown out over there. So if there's a group where we're going to hate this person or hate this group or hate a situation, that we're really revealing, wow, you have a lot of self-hatred going on inside of you. If we're judgmental, if we're judging and condemning another person or another group, what we're really saying is, oh, by the way, I am so judgmental of myself. I'm so busy putting myself down that I've got to project it over there. And that's why Jesus Christ, one with the living God, knew full well that the only antidote to humanity is to allow the dynamic of being totally loved and accepted by the living God. He gives his life away on a cross to forgive our sins. Personally, I don't think so. I think that's a little negative. He gives his life away on a cross to permeate into our mind and our heart that who you are is totally lovable and acceptable, and do the world a favor, knock it off, and start loving yourself and feeling good about yourself so that you could project that out onto the world. And the world's going to be a lot better off if each one of us could start loving and embracing and accepting ourselves. It could be the greatest gift we could ever give the world, is to love and embrace and accept who we are. So Jesus walks into that temple and is like, man, I got a big job in front of me. First of all, they're ripping everybody off. Then these people are into sacrificing lambs. And here I'm going to try to talk to them about the kingdom of heaven is within you. And then I'm going to give my life away on a cross because it's like the most powerful thing I could possibly do to get it into everybody's thick head that you totally love and accept it. So Jesus wants us to incorporate that into ourselves. He wants us to see our oneness with every human being on the planet Earth. African American, Caucasian, homosexual, heterosexual, whatever. We're human beings. And you know what's interesting? I thought to this. African Americans are an expression of the living God. Homosexuals are an expression of the living God. Heterosexuals are an expression of the living God. Every one of us is an expression of the living God. So it gives us a sense of who God is. And wants us to walk around this planet with that sense of oneness and acceptance. So if Jesus walks into Good Shepherd, when everybody's back here, he walks in and says, what's my Father's temple like? What am I going to experience in this Father's house, this temple called Good Shepherd? To make this a temple of the living God comes when every one of us here at Good Shepherd, because we're the temple, and we're called to live out that vision of Jesus Christ, to love ourselves, to embrace ourselves, and to project that love out to everybody at this church and in the world. This oneness, this is the essence of who we are. It's our true identity. It's not a role that we play. That's got nothing to do with who we are. To make Good Shepherd a temple where people can come and feel loved and embraced and welcomed. Now you might say, yeah, I hope that other group is really hearing what he's saying, because we know how they can be. Now, don't say that. We're not talking about other people. We're talking about and going within ourselves. Am I projecting my love within myself toward other human beings?